Hey there, good afternoon and welcome to The Nation. You're with me, Tamina Kausji, and we're coming live from the Bernama News Channel studios. Now for Wednesday's edition of The Nation today, we take a broad focus on the family. Now of course, we are looking today into parents and teenagers and building a healthy, stable relationship that with a focus on respect that actually goes both ways, not just for the parents but also for the teenagers. With that in mind, today I have in the hot seat with me two amazing ladies, Dr. Ida Hartini binti Ahmad Tarbe, who is a senior lecturer with the Faculty of Education at University Malaya, as well as an EXCO member of Perkama International, which is the Malaysian Counseling Association. She is joined by Jacqueline Ong, who's the co-founder of the EQ Edge Group, and this is going to definitely be a sparky conversation. Ladies, how are you this afternoon?
Fine, Tamina. Thank you very much.
All right, so brilliant to have the both of you in here.
Thank you for
now
having
this
us.
is definitely a perennial topic as well. It never really goes out of fashion. And as the both of you were telling me earlier, you are both, in addition to your capacity professionally, also mothers of teenagers.
Yes.
Yep. So a lot of personal experience as well
Very
to go into
challenging
it.
role instead.
Exactly. So let's launch straight into the conversation. What would you say, Dr. Ida, are some of the challenges which face not only Malaysian parents but parents globally in an era whereby you're raising teenagers but also it's the digital age?
All right. Okay. I think in the cyber age whatsoever, we are handling children who have more information rather than focusing on the ones that we have as parents give them. They also have information available everywhere, and these are they like having a cyber family instead of small unit of family. So the challenge come from outsiders. Come from their new friends that they don't even know about, okay? Because they will get comments online, and they feel that these people are more significant than the parents. So we know now these parents are more focusing on careers and all that.
That's
so
right.
Parents are beginning to spending less time with the children. So that is where the gap is.
That's right. And Jacqueline, I notice you nodding along to pretty much everything that Dr. Ida was saying. Share with us a little bit about how difficult it is and what the challenges are of raising a child, especially a teenager, in a digital age.
I think there's so many different angles to this, and I think raising a child in today's world, the first thing is they have very different ideas on what different values and different interpretation of what's important, and especially I think the generation gap problem that is perennial, you know?
Absolutely.
But in this particular age it's even more glaring because the transformation and the change in this digital age is so fast that, you know, even we ourselves are grappling with the changes that's going on around us, and you have to deal with teenagers who can't quite grasp what it means, you know, to be what respect means to them and what respect means to us are two very different things. And correct definition is important. Who is significant is important, and they are grappling with all these changes externally, internally. They are growing up and they're trying to find independence, they're trying to assert themselves. And on the other hand, parents are getting worried at the same time. And I think the major challenge actually for all parents is because they are so emotionally invested in the child.
Naturally.
And everything that the child does will evoke a tremendous emotional reaction. So you worry double, triple, you fear double, triple, you feel hurt double, triple. So everything is magnified because of the emotional investment you have in the child. So I think that's by itself a big challenge.
That's right. Now, exemplified, of course, by how many children you also have. Now, let's say you've just got one child, but what if you're raising 2 or even 3 or more teenagers at the same time? Let's start off with now, what does it mean to build respect between parents and teenagers? Dr. Ida.
Okay, I think respect is firstly about trust. Okay, because if you trust somebody, you have to allow them to do things within their capability. But as parents, we know that we can't actually trust our teenagers 100% yet, because this is where we still need to guide them, because teenagers years are years of building their identity, and we have to make sure that we give the right equipment, so-called, so that they can build a proper identity. If not, they will get confused with all this information and all that. And also, but the parents need to give some space.
And at the same time, we've got the phenomenon of helicopter parenting, which we've seen quite a lot of articles even in the local press.
Space come in, because the parent doesn't give the children space to explore new things. They don't give them the children space to make choices. This is when the children are going to start rebelling towards the parents.
Exactly. So Jacqueline, how do parents actually build the type of emotional intelligence skills which they need to be able to communicate effectively? Because children learn by example, of course.
Yes, absolutely. But I think it starts with the parents themselves recognizing what challenges they have. And the beautiful thing now is that neuroscientists have come up to help us understand why teenagers behave the way they behave, rather than in the past we just take it as, oh, it's the teenage phase, they become weird and things like that. And we now understand that this is a phase where it's a transition from childhood to adulthood. It is and neuroscientists tell you that this is the second most dynamic seasons in their lives after infancy. This is the time where they absolutely change physically, they change emotionally, and
hormonally.
Absolutely. And so they are facing all of these changes, and it's actually to equip them to be independent. They are learning what it means to make decisions, make mistakes. They have to explore. They are learning how to be independent. And so it is actually quite natural for them to challenge boundaries, to challenge authority, because they think they're invincible. Yes, they think they're invincible. They think they know it all, you know. And in a time where hormones are raging, they are highly emotional themselves.
Exactly. And I think we've all been teenagers. We've all personally gone through that.
Yes.
But the ironic part is sometimes, somewhat, when people do become parents, the language changes. Dr. Ida, perhaps a lot of today's teens feel undervalued, misjudged. Maybe it's because of the language that's actually used by parents. How do you think that can actually change?
For each family, we may have different language structure. How we talk to our children may be different from one family to another. But I think it's the way that you communicate things. Okay, but for example, if you are communicating boundaries, you have to know how to put it assertively. Like nowadays, like you're saying, that parents are becoming friends to children. So we are letting go of our boundary of being assertive. We are more passive. We are letting the children, maybe we are
over-pampering them, perhaps.
Yes, over-pampering them, because we are scared that if we are controlling them, somehow they will go away from us.
That's right, they won't tell you things.
Children nowadays have the tendency to run away, to go off with friends without telling you, and they try to become more independent without having your guidance. So it's very important for the parents to use. I think the communication skills is much important than the language itself.
Right. Jacqueline, your perspective, and how can actually, in your opinion, how can that culture of respect be built within families?
Well, first of all, it doesn't start in teenage years. It starts, it is all based on the quality of the relationship. And I think when we talk about communication skills, we have to pay attention to what's the quality of the relationship in the first place, because it's not a problem that you can just solve by, oh, I need to adopt better communication skills. Because if you've never had a good relationship with a child all his or her life, then in teenage years it's going to be an even harder struggle.
That's right, especially building empathy, building compassion, which are key during those tough teenage years.
So for me, as a parent to a teenage child, I wouldn't say that I have the perfect relationship or the answer to all of life's problems. But what I find helps me is my personal perspective and my ability to recognize my feelings and how I am reacting, because I tell myself the child's cognitive brain is not fully developed. So I just go into this mode where I say, he's got a half-cooked brain. I am supposed to be the one with the fully grown brain. So I should have better regulation, and I shouldn't
I should be setting the tone.
Yes, I shouldn't be dragged into this conversation, into a place where I don't want to be. So recognizing my own emotional intensity helps me decide whether this is a good time to talk about a topic, because if my emotional intensities are rising, then I know it's not a good time, because the tone of my voice is just going to trigger his defensiveness, it's just going to trigger his reaction. So I've got to literally choose my own timing so that I can be assertive without being, you know, in a fight mode.
So parents should be in charge of the
I
narrative.
think the bonding starts very much earlier, since infancy. You have to start communicating with your child. But nowadays, most family or mothers are sending children to
babysitters, of course, because they
and all
work
that.
as well.
And then we don't actually communicate with our children. And I think in terms of emotional intelligence, one thing you should be able to do is how to observe your children's body language as well. It's not what they talk about. It's about how they show the emotions to us, because we have to catch that signals, right? If not, some children, they won't even talk to you because they think that you wouldn't understand what their problems are.
Exactly.
So you have to know where to tackle them, how to keep them to talk to you later. I mean, it's about attending skills, to be close to them, even though they don't reveal it in the first place. But if you keep showing that you care for them, they will definitely
respond. Now, speaking about, you know, being responsive and being cued in and actually listening to all those emotional, physical cues. On the flip side, though, there are also parents who they come to a bridge, especially with their teenagers, where they've done everything within their capacity, and henceforth, still, it's actually resulting in the opposite. The teenager is rebellious in every possible way. So how would a parent, or how should a parent ideally deal with a situation like that to bring it under control for everyone's best interests?
I think, in my opinion, there is no right way or wrong way to parent. And you've seen people who parent in one way and then they get absolutely successful children, and another parent that parents in the same way and they get disastrous results, so to say. And and I think very much even the same way we coach leaders, you know, the same style doesn't work for everyone, because there's so much context, the family context, the kind of relationship, the kind of culture that you have in your family. So I wouldn't venture to say what should parents do in any situation, because there is no rule book about how to handle your teenagers.
Absolutely.
And for me, if you've done your absolute best, which I think all parents do, I think the one thing parents do is they try their utmost best. They may not be the perfect parents, and they try their utmost best. But I think if you've done the best and they are, in your eyes, still rebellious, maybe this is a season where you've got to live it out with them as they begin to grapple with who they are and what they can challenge with. And the one advice that many people have said is, you've still got to let them know that you are there, so that when they fall, they have you there as their constant support. You know,
I agree with that, because none of us have actually gone through trainings as parents, right? we just when mothers
go off
deliver
into the deep end.
Yes,
That's right.
we have to go through the moments and all that. But there, for me, there is no expiry date for a parent to learn new things, right? We can still keep learning how to improve ourselves. But I find that when I attend cases with parents who have teenage children, they may some parents feel ashamed if their children don't turn out right, so-called. So they don't
There's a lot of shame, guilt also involved in that paradigm.
and they don't want to share with their friends, because they think that if I share these things with my friends, they will have a negative perspective on me as a parent, for example. So they keep it to themselves, and their parenting skill doesn't improve. it's good for you to share with somebody who may have a teenage
Similar challenges.
Similar challenges. 'Cause I'm sure all parents are going through challenges with teenage children, right? But when we keep it to ourselves, we don't know that how we don't learn new coping skills. So
That's
it's
right.
very important to have somebody to talk to. You can have your best friends, the very least,
Yes.
or even you can
Your own
ask.
support group, right?
And you can even ask your parents how they deal with you when you are. I'm sure we are challenges to our parents too.
Yes.
Exactly.
But I like what you said, because one thing I've personally learned is that I've got to get away from my expectations of what he should be and be ready to expect that he's going to be who he is going to be, and that may not jive with what I have in mind of what he should be. Because once we manage that expectations, we first of all don't feel ashamed, because the child is the child that you bring up to be his or her own person, and two, you have less disappointment, because then you don't say, oh, I have failed, he has failed, he's not what he should be, she's not what she should be. But you know, we all have different gifts that we bring to the table, and just because they didn't fit into what we thought they should be,
the type of box that you anticipated,
doesn't mean that they are a failure or we're a failure. Maybe we were wrong in the first place to have certain expectations of what they should be.
Now, speaking of expectations, though, a lot of popular culture today dictates that parents should be friends with their children. But at the same time, if you're friends with someone, that means you're basically on a power sharing basis.
Yes.
But on the other hand, conventional parenting psychology and methodology would tell you that you cannot ever have that. What's your opinion on that, Jacqueline?
Well, I think, like everything in life, it's never either end. It's always a balance. I think in today's world, we cannot afford to have the dictatorial approach.
Right.
But I also agree that you cannot go all the way and just be friends. You have to give them that space, that respect, and I think it's good, especially in the later teen years, to be able to engage them and get them to really talk to you about how they feel about certain thing. And we have to also understand that they do have feelings, right or wrong. I may not agree with how they feel, but hey, it's real. They do feel angry, they do feel upset, and a conversation I just had with my son is that, you know, you have every right to feel angry, but that doesn't give you the right to be rude or to be, you know, to do things, because the anger is one thing, what you do with it is a different thing altogether.
Right. Now, speaking about what children do with anger, though, Dr. Ida, you've also spoken that you've done quite a lot of counseling within schools, where you've actually noticed that there is a great upswing in self-harm amongst students. Tell us a little bit about that in your experience.
Nowadays, maybe one of the problems with teenagers is that they have a lack of coping skills, and they don't have the effective communication skills to talk about their problems with someone.
That's
and
right.
when they're at home, I find that these children who have problems with their own self-concept and all, they don't feel that they have the chance to talk to the parents. Most of them have very busy parents, career parents, right? Both of the parents working and come back late at night, and when they have problems, they have the time and space to talk to the parents. That's when they feel that they are going to cope it using their own ways, but their own so-called own ways is
turning to their cyber families, their online friends and community.
Families, and when they get negative comments, because this cyber family, most of them most probably are the same age as these children, and they are not mature. They give comments without thinking, and all of these are affecting the self-concept of these children. So because they feel that if my cyber friends so-called think that I'm not good enough, then I'm really not good enough. So that's when they do things like cutting themselves and all that.
Yeah, self-harm. Now, we've also, on the other side of the extreme, seen the recent case of the teenager who actually committed suicide. And this was actually something that came out as a result of an online consensus poll. So that is definitely something which is an extremely worrying trend for parents in Malaysia particularly. But restricting internet access may not actually be the answer to that. Jacqueline, how does a parent handle this fraught new situation?
I wish I had an answer for you, because that would really solve a lot of our problems. But I think parents today need to accept that the internet is not going away. That this new technology era, this digital era is not going to go away anytime soon. In fact, it's going to pick up even more. We're talking about 5G, we're talking about artificial intelligence. So I think learning to cope with it starts at a young age, not at the teenage years when they are already in a place where some of their thoughts are already set in place and they have different exposure. Being able to engage them, and I truly believe that kids need to be equipped with emotional competence even at a young age. Knowing how they feel and how to handle their emotions, and to be able to regulate their own emotions so that they don't, get into a state where they are no longer coherent. All of that are what we often say the first line of defense against depression. Because when you begin to recognize how you feel, and you know that those feelings are not healthy, and being able to regulate them, then you know how to call for help when the time comes. But unfortunately, in today's world, we still very much focus on developing the cognitive. We're more concerned whether they get the A's, the academic performance, the by the age of 2, I want them to know how to spell, how to count. You have your flashcards. But I think emotional competence is a life skill. It's a life skill where when you begin to recognize that your emotions are powerful, that's where you learn to manage it. And that is actually the foundation for all the skills that we talk about: grit, agility, resilience. These are all emotional competence. It's nothing to do with motivation, how motivated you are, how resilient you are. These are all emotional strength.
That's right.
May I add something to just the question just now you asked about how do we set up respect in the family? Okay, if I make say something about a theory in counseling or in psychology, in fact, we have the term called superego. Superego is the values that your parents or those significant others in your family instill upon you since you are young. So it's very important that the family itself play a good role in implanting this superego, these values, these good values, and respect is part of it. So once the children have a very good superego, they will know how to differentiate what is wrong and what is right when they grow up. But it has to begin since young.
That's right. But at the same time, though, even a lot of adults and parents among them struggle with developing this. So would you say, though, that the single most effective way to teaching teens emotional intelligence is actually role modeling, Jacqueline?
I wouldn't call it the single most, but I would definitely say it is a very important way to teach it, because if you cannot role model what it means to regulate your own emotions, how do you even preach that to anyone? Your ability to handle your emotional state and your ability not to let your emotions take over is by itself an example of dealing with crisis, dealing with challenges.
And being human at the same time.
I think parents are the models to enhance children's emotional intelligence, because at home they see how our emotions when we talk, when we do things, okay, so they will learn from it, because
so if you have, let's say, a stormy relationship with your domestic partner, naturally your children will either regress or they will model after that, even in their own life experience.
Because even in the way we talk, communication skills, okay, so if you are talking in the good way with among yourself in the family, the children will catch those values and they're going to gain respect from that. Okay, and we're talking to children, we have like certain tones. Don't use the harsh tones with children, even though you think that you're giving instructions to them. You have to make sure that they still accept the instructions, but they don't feel that they are forced to do it.
That's right. Okay, so on that note, we take a short commercial break, but we will be back right after that to continue the conversation. Okay, we've got a slight audio disruption, so we will be going into a commercial break. Let's take that break now, and we'll come back right after. Thank you. Hey there, welcome back to The Nation. Still with me, Tamina Kauji, and today's discussion is focusing on respect between parents and teens in the family unit. So, Jacqueline, Dr. Ida, we were speaking earlier about parents who have difficulty communicating with teens. Now, on the flip side, what about teenagers who are having difficulty communicating with their parents and being treated as perhaps not full-fledged adults, but with some respect at least? Jacqueline.
Well, I think all teenagers will want to be respected because they are struggling to assert their identity. I'm growing up, I am, who I am. And I think they even see it in simple things like knock on the door before you come in. At least let me know you're coming in. And we all have all these complaints about teenagers locking the door and
Yes,
not
I can
allowing you in
understand that.
there, right? Yeah, but and I think it's important that we agree on what respect means, right? And what sort of minimal courtesy we should accord to each other in this relationship and how that should be done. And I had a conversation with my teenager, and we talked about what it means to respect. And we talked about things like just because he disagrees with me doesn't mean he disrespects me. And sometimes it takes a healthy respect to be able to engage in a conversation where we have different views.
That's right. So healthy respect, having a relationship that is working. Dr. Ida, as well as Jacqueline, thank you so much. We've actually come towards the end of the segment for today, but we hope all the parents out there watching and even teenagers have learned just that little bit more about how to build a relationship built on respect. I'm Tamina Kauji signing off on The Nation. We'll see you again next round. All right. Ladies, so we're just